All right, so in more good news for Queensland overnight, 0 new cases. And I do want to congratulate every single Queenslander for the great job that you are doing, because if it wasn't through our collective effort, this will not be happening. So that's wonderful news. We only have 8 active cases, so our total confirmed cases stands at 1,091, and the number of tests that have been conducted in the last 24 hours is 2,519. So there has been no evidence of community transmission in Queensland now for 28 days. This is great news, but of course it rests on every single Queenslander. If you are sick, stay at home and get tested, keep up the social distancing and the good hand hygiene, and we'll get through it. I also just wanted to say a big thank you to Queensland families for getting out over the People's Long Weekend and supporting our businesses and tourism sector across the southeast. And hopefully with the September school holidays, people can get out and support more of regional Queensland. So well done everyone. It's great to see the terrific effort that every single Queenslander is putting in to keep Queenslanders safe. I'll hand over to the Deputy Premier.
Thanks so much, Maria. Of those 8 cases of COVID-19 that remain active in Queensland, just 3 are in hospital. In the last fortnight, we confirmed 2 new cases. In the fortnight before that, we confirmed 12. It's now been 16 days since a known infectious case has been in the community. Things are, at this stage, going very, very well in Queensland.
No new cases in Queensland overnight, which is excellent. It means, though, that we have to be even more careful with anyone coming into Queensland from a hotspot, which today is all of Victoria and New South Wales, although people in those strict border zone areas can travel into Queensland, and anyone from overseas. So it is really important that that is managed as it has been to date. Also, it's very important, we don't know where the next case might pop up. We hope there won't be any that we don't know about. We hope that all cases are in quarantine, but it's still really important that anyone who becomes unwell gets tested for COVID and isolates themselves immediately. And that way, if we get on top of the first case, we'll stop a cluster happening and we'll stop the broader consequences. So, anyone who's unwell, stay home, isolate and get immediately tested. Everyone does need to maintain that habit of social distancing and don't go to places where there are more cases. Thank you.
Thanks, Deputy Commissioner.
Morning everyone. As you've heard, in a great space, but a busy weekend, busy long weekend that we've had. So 132 flights came into the state, 7,230 passengers were processed, 19 were refused entry and 740 placed into quarantine. At our road borders we saw 8,861 vehicles intercepted, 594 people turned around, so we're still seeing large numbers of people trying to get into the state that cannot lawfully do so at the moment. So message to everyone from interstate, as you've heard from the Chief Health Officer, is that if you're coming out of Victoria, New South Wales or the ACT, it is a hotspot. Unless you have an exemption, you will not be allowed into the state. And on those road borders, we quarantined 27 persons. We currently have 3,227 persons in hotel quarantine in the state. Over the weekend, we inspected 605 licensed premises across the state, and only 1 formal warning to a premises, to a venue in Townsville was given. Overall, very good compliance, lower numbers attending, but we're still seeing lack of social distancing by some patrons, and our police officers and Office of Liquor and Gaming Regulation personnel are having to intervene and tell people what to do and remind them to constantly. So the message to the community is please practice your social distancing at all times. And in that period over the long weekend, we've had 14 on-the-spot fines issued, 9 of which were for false declarations for people trying to get across the border and 1 other border breach. Thank you. Look, I'm not aware of that individual case. Would seem unusual to me. If people have the right pass to come back in, And obviously there's a number of different exemptions they could have, particularly a nurse returning if they've been working there. Certainly would like to know the details there if there was any issues with it, but not aware of that one.
So those 500 odd people, what are they doing? Are they travelling up from somewhere? Are they on holiday? Why are they...
These are all people driving into our state or coming to our state without the proper exemption, so they don't have an X pass or an S pass or an F pass. We're still seeing people turn up at our road borders with G passes. You won't get in on those at the moment. So make sure they have the right passes. So there's either an irregularity in their pass and they're not allowed in, or they're just simply coming out of a hotspot and they're not going to be permitted entry. Those people are still trying to get in.
And they just haven't heard the messaging, or they think that they're going to be allowed in?
Yeah, I think that's all of the above. There's a whole raft of different reasons why people are doing this, but it's fortunately our officers are being vigilant and we're finding large numbers like that and turning them around. No, this was where a breach of the directions, but not a high level one. This is where people, pardon me, we work with the licensed venues, and if appears that they're trying to do the right thing but they've made an error, they'll be given a warning for it, and that was the instance in that one. Thank you.
Oh, we're not talking about that yet. Once Victoria makes their decision, the AFL, once the national body makes their decision, but we are having some close court talks behind the scenes. Well, we're going to work very closely behind the scenes, and if the decision is made for it not to be held in Melbourne, Queensland has hosted the bulk of the competition, and I would hope that people living in Victoria would also support Queensland. Yeah, absolutely. I think the hotel needs to step up if there are complaints, just as if anyone else was staying in a hotel across Queensland. Yes. We're not at that stage at the moment. Like I said, we need the AFL to make their decision, and this is a very tough decision because, let's face it, it has never left Victoria, but Queensland does stand ready, willing and able to host if it is unable to be hosted in Victoria.
The situation in Queensland.
No intention of delaying the election here at all. No intention.
The situation in Queensland being a little bit more favourable now.
Yes.
How much does that play into your decision with reopening borders, or is it purely sort of based on what's going down south?
Let me make it very clear. We will always put Queenslanders first. We will put the safety of Queenslanders first, and we do not have any intentions of opening any borders whilst there is community transmission active in Victoria and in New South Wales. Yes. That sounds like normal for a long weekend. There's a lot of money that's going into the upgrades of the Bruce Highway, right up and down the length and breadth of the Bruce Highway. So it's progressively being rolled out. But of course, the Sunshine Coast is incredibly popular tourist destination, but also too, we have more housing and everything going into those areas, especially around that Caloundra South area. So as more and more residents are moving into those areas, of course we need to keep up with the infrastructure, and that's exactly what we're doing. I'll have to talk to the Attorney General about that. You can talk to the Attorney General. Yep.
Just ask you about things of drugs in the hospital. How common is it, and how many staff have been disciplined and or stood down?
Look, obviously all of our hospitals monitor very closely their medications, especially those that are drugs of addiction. I understand that in the material that was reported on today and released recently by Metro North and Metro South, only one occasion was referred to the CCC. That was because all of the others, once investigated, had appropriate cause. For example, liquid drugs that are drawn in case they are needed but were not needed, or drugs that were spilled and spoiled and therefore had to be redrawn. There is an exemption for transplant teams, but if you don't mind, I might ask the Chief Health Officer to address it in more detail.
No, there are no issues in Queensland. I understand that some other states have had some concerns, but right from the word go in Queensland, we've allowed organ and tissue retrieval teams to travel freely between Victoria, New South Wales, ACT and Queensland.
Dr. Young, can I ask you about New South Wales? Last week you gave some indications that, obviously you're watching what's going on there every day, but that there was concern that it was spreading north and further north. Where's the situation at now, and is it likely that that border bubble might be cut off, or do you feel like things will be contained in New South Wales?
Things are no worse today than they were a week ago, which is very, very good news, and we hope that New South Wales will be able to manage all of their cases so that they get back to a situation where there's no community transmission.
And the metric that you were using earlier this year was to have 2 incubation periods with no community transmission cases. Is that still the same sort of time frame that you've got in your mind at the moment?
Yes, that definitely is.
Yep, a couple more and then... Well, the legislation there is about stopping wage theft, so I think that's really important. I think we've seen very clear examples of employers exploiting employees, so it'd be great to have that legislation passed. Well, it's going through committee, so people can have their say there. Yep, last one. Yep. Correct. Yeah, absolutely. I mean, I think we're going to continue to see restrictions in Victoria. I think it's up until around Christmas time. That's very unfortunate for people living down there, but it's a serious situation. You only have to look at what's happening around the world, and we definitely don't want to see that happen here. So my job is to keep this state safe. And I just want to reassure Queenslanders, we have an absolutely committed team, including the Deputy Premier, the Chief Health Officer, our Deputy Commissioner and our Commissioner, and all of our Directors General and Ministers are absolutely focused on this. So we have tried and tested management team that has been established, the way in which we deal with cyclones, bushfires and floods, and that will continue. I just want to thank them for their great work that they have done, and we applaud them. Thank you. Thanks, everyone. You can all get out of the cold now.